You know, I played you in the picture, and you are you, and I am me, and since you are you, and I was you.
Tied up with strings, these are a few of my favorite things.
At 89, Julie Andrews is opening up in ways no one expected, revealing surprising truths about her life that are leaving fans speechless. She's sharing parts of her story that have remained hidden for decades. But what exactly has the beloved actress said that has everyone talking? Join us as we uncover the candid and unexpected revelations Julie Andrews has finally decided to share. Prim and proper, Julie Andrews. Julie Andrews is one of the most beloved actresses in film history, known around the world for her roles in Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music. But before she became a household name, her life was filled with challenges, hard work, and quiet strength. She was born Julia Elizabeth Wells on October 1, 1935, in Walton-on-Thames, a town in Surrey, England. Her early years were shaped by difficult family circumstances. Her parents were both teachers, but her mother, Barbara, left her father to live with a Canadian tenor named Ted Andrews. Julie later took his last name, even though he was not her biological father. From a young age, Julie showed a rare musical gift. She had a 4-octave singing voice, which is very unusual and powerful. Her mother and stepfather quickly realized her talent and included her in their performances. Julie began singing on stage when she was only 9 years old, performing in music halls and vaudeville acts. Because she was so small, she had to stand on a beer crate to reach the microphone. But her home life was far from happy. Ted Andrews drank heavily, and her mother also started drinking. Julie has shared in her memoir that Ted tried to enter her bedroom at night when he was drunk. To protect herself, she put a lock on her door. These experiences forced Julie to grow up fast. She had little time for a normal education. Instead, she worked constantly to help support her family. By her teens, she was already earning enough money to buy them a house. Despite the hardships, Julie's career took off. At age 12, she performed in front of the royal family at the Royal Command Performance. She made her West End debut at 13, starring in Starlight Roof. By the early 1950s, she had moved into bigger productions, and in 1954, she went to Broadway in New York to star in The Boyfriend. Her breakthrough came in 1956 when she starred as Eliza Doolittle in the Broadway production of My Fair Lady. She became a star in both the US and the UK. Julie made her film debut in 1964 with Walt Disney's Mary Poppins, a role that won her an Academy Award. The following year, she starred in The Sound of Music, another huge success. These two films made her an international icon. Audiences around the world fell in love with her charm, beautiful voice, and wholesome image. She was seen as graceful, gentle, and practically perfect in every way, just like the character she played. And as you'll soon see, there's a lot more to Julie Andrews than just tea and spoonfuls of sugar. The pinnacle of stardom. Julie Andrews became a global star in the 1960s. And for many people, she still represents the golden age of Hollywood musicals. Her voice, smile, and graceful presence on screen made her a favorite around the world. But while her rise to fame seemed fast, it was the result of years of hard work and dedication. In 1964, Julie made her film debut in Mary Poppins, the Disney musical that would change her life forever. At the time, she was already well known on Broadway, especially for her role as Eliza Doolittle in My Fair Lady. However, when the film version of My Fair Lady was made, the studio gave the role to Audrey Hepburn instead. Many believed Julie was overlooked, but Walt Disney had seen her on stage and knew she was perfect for Mary Poppins. He cast her in the title role, and it turned out to be a perfect match. Mary Poppins was a huge hit with audiences and critics. In 1965, Julie won the Academy Award for Best Actress for her performance. It was her very first film role, and she won Hollywood's biggest prize. The following year, she starred in another unforgettable film, The Sound of Music. In it, she played Maria, a spirited young woman who becomes a governess for 7 children in Austria during the time leading up to World War II. The film featured joyful songs, beautiful scenery, and a heartfelt story. With these two roles, Julie was now a major movie star, but she also became closely associated with sweet, proper, and cheerful characters. She didn't want to be stuck playing the same type of role again and again. Over the next several years, she looked for different types of characters and stories. Julie continued to act in films and on television through the 1980s and 1990s. She also performed in concerts and stage productions. But in 1997, her career faced a serious challenge. She underwent vocal cord surgery to remove non-cancerous nodules from her throat. Unfortunately, the surgery damaged her singing voice. For someone who had been singing since childhood, this was a devastating loss. She later filed a lawsuit against the doctors, which was eventually settled. Even though she could no longer sing as she once did, Julie didn't give up on her creative work. She found new ways to connect with audiences. In the 2000s, she took on voice roles in popular animated films. Most people recognize her as the voice of Queen Lillian in the Shrek series. Family, love, and loss. Behind the bright lights of Hollywood and the applause of audiences around the world, Julie Andrews lived a life full of both love and heartbreak. Her personal life was marked by deep connections, difficult decisions, and the strength to carry on through loss. Julie Andrews married her first husband, Tony Walton, in 1959. Tony was a set and costume designer, and the two met when they were still quite young. They shared a love for the arts, and their early relationship was filled with creativity and support. Tony worked on many of Julie's early stage performances and later helped design costumes for her most famous film, Mary Poppins. Together, Julie and Tony had a daughter, Emma Walton, born in 1962. Julie was just beginning her film career around this time. Balancing motherhood and stardom wasn't easy. However, the demands of her growing career and Tony's work eventually began to take a toll on their marriage. The couple drifted apart and divorced in 1967, though they remained on good terms and continued to support each other as co-parents. Not long after her divorce, Julie met Blake Edwards, a well-known film director and screenwriter. He was the man behind hits like Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Pink Panther series. Their first meeting wasn't particularly romantic. Julie says they passed each other while pulling into a therapist's office driveway, but something clicked between them. They dated for several years and finally married in 1969. Their relationship was full of highs and lows. Julie and Blake were both strong, creative individuals. They understood each other's worlds and often worked together. Blake directed several of her films, including S.O.B. and Victor Victoria, but life wasn't always glamorous. Blake struggled with chronic health issues, including gallbladder problems, back pain, and infections. He also suffered from depression and mood swings. Julie often stepped into the role of caretaker, supporting him through medical treatments and emotional difficulties. In interviews, she has spoken openly about how stressful and demanding this time was. Together, Julie and Blake built a blended family. Julie had her daughter Emma, and Blake had two children from a previous marriage, Jennifer and Jeffrey. In the early 1970s, they decided to expand their family further by adopting two Vietnamese girls, Amy and Joanna, after the Vietnam War. Their marriage lasted over 40 years, filled with both joyful moments and serious challenges. Blake's health slowly declined, and Julie was by his side through every step. In 2010, he passed away from pneumonia. Julie was heartbroken. Losing him left a huge gap in her life. She later said in interviews that she felt a bit lost without him. Their bond had been deep and lasting, and his absence was felt every day. And now, in her newest memoir, she's revealing some unexpected truths that even longtime fans might not see coming. The secret saucy edge of Mary Poppins. Julie Andrews is best known for her role as the practically perfect nanny in Disney's Mary Poppins, but according to her memoir, there's more to Mary and Julie than meets the eye. Behind the tidy hair bun, buttoned-up coat, and firm but kind voice, there was a hidden layer of mischief and playfulness, both in the character and in the actress herself. In her memoir, Homework, Andrews shares a small but revealing detail about the making of Mary Poppins. While getting fitted for her costume, her first husband, Tony Walton, who also happened to be the film's costume designer, pointed out something interesting. He told her, "I fancy that Mary Poppins has a secret life, a kind of quiet pleasure at being a little wicked and naughty." This wasn't just an idea. He added little surprises into her costumes to reflect it. Though Mary appeared prim and proper on the outside, the linings of her coats were bright coral and primrose, and her petticoats were playfully colorful. These were small design choices that most viewers would never notice, but they added depth to the character. They hinted that underneath her strict and sensible look, Mary Poppins enjoyed being just a little bit cheeky. Julie found this idea amusing and fitting. She agreed that Mary Poppins might have a hidden, playful side. It made her think more about the double life of the character and, interestingly, her own. On screen, Andrews was the image of perfect behavior, playing characters who were moral, kind, and proper. But off-screen, she admits in her memoir, she had a cheeky streak. She wasn't wild or rebellious, but she certainly didn't fit the saintly image that Hollywood often gave her. Andrews has said in interviews that she enjoys being a little unexpected. She once remarked, "Does Mary Poppins have an orgasm? Does she go to the bathroom? I assure you she does." Her words were bold, humorous, and real, reminding people that actresses are not their characters. Julie wanted fans to know that even someone who played the most proper woman in film history could be funny, curious, and even a little naughty. This awareness, and her comfort in owning it, is something she shares in her memoir with honesty and pride. And wait until you hear what happened when she had to film her very first on-screen love scene. Singing on a beer crate. Julie Andrews' life may seem like a fairy tale to many, but her childhood was far from magical. Long before she sang on mountaintops or floated through the sky with an umbrella, Julie was a little girl facing very grown-up problems. In her memoir, she shares the tough truth about how she became her family's breadwinner at just 9 years old. Born Julia Elizabeth Wells in 1935 in Walton-on-Thames, Surrey, Julie grew up in a home filled with music, but also with a lot of instability. Her parents were both teachers who later became involved in entertainment. Her mother, Barbara, was a pianist, and after divorcing Julie's biological father, she married Ted Andrews, a Canadian tenor. Julie took his last name, becoming Julie Andrews. Julie had a natural gift, her singing voice. Even as a child, it was powerful and unique, with a remarkable 4-octave range. That voice soon became a source of income for the family. When Julie was just 9 years old, she began performing on stage in vaudeville shows, joining her stepfather and mother's act. To reach the microphone, she had to stand on a beer crate. While most children her age were in school or playing outside, Julie was performing in crowded halls, touring across the country, and earning money to support her family. But life at home was far from safe or happy. Both of her parents struggled with alcoholism, especially her stepfather. In her memoir, Julie shares a deeply personal and painful truth. Ted Andrews, when drunk, tried twice to enter her bedroom inappropriately. She took control of her safety by putting a lock on her door, a decision no child should ever have to make. It was one of the first of many signs that Julie had to grow up faster than most. The emotional burden didn't stop there. When she was 15, Julie learned that Ted Andrews wasn't her biological father. Her real father was a family friend her mother had been involved with during the war. Discovering this truth was confusing and difficult. But even through this emotional chaos, Julie kept performing, kept earning, and kept going. By her early teens, Julie's singing and stage work had made her one of the top performers in the UK. She was so successful that she was able to buy a house for her family, a remarkable and rare achievement for someone so young. But this early success came with a price. She didn't have time for much formal education, and childhood joys like friends, freedom, and fun were often missing. Her job was to keep the family afloat, and she carried that weight without complaint. And soon enough, that inner strength would be tested again this time on a movie set with a steamy love scene that left her weak at the knees. The red-hot scene with James Garner. By the time Julie Andrews filmed the Americanization of Emily in 1964, she had already become a household name thanks to Mary Poppins. But while that film showed her singing and flying through the air, it didn't ask her to explore much romance on screen. That all changed when she starred opposite James Garner in Emily, a role that required her to perform her very first on-screen love scene. It was a moment that challenged her comfort zone and revealed a side of herself she hadn't shared before. The Americanization of Emily was a wartime romantic drama set in London during World War II. It was a very different kind of film compared to her previous work. The story was more adult, and the emotions it explored were deeper and more complicated. In the film, Julie played an English war widow who falls for a charming American officer played by James Garner. Their characters shared a strong emotional and physical connection, something the script called on Julie to show clearly on screen. Julie was 28 years old at the time, and although she had been on stage for most of her life, she was still quite new to the world of film. She had never filmed anything so intimate. In her memoir, she openly admits she was terrified of doing a love scene. She didn't know what was expected. She hadn't had much romantic experience in her real life either, and she says she felt completely out of her depth. "I had no idea what one was supposed to do with a kiss and all of that," she recalled during an interview with ABC TV. That moment of vulnerability was very real for her. She was used to playing strong, good-hearted characters who didn't venture into sensual territory. Now, she was being asked to show passion, chemistry, and even desire, all in front of cameras, a crew, and countless viewers. Luckily, James Garner turned out to be the perfect scene partner. Julie described him as delicious and, more importantly, kind, professional, and easygoing. His calming presence helped ease her nerves. Garner didn't rush her or make her feel uncomfortable. Instead, he supported her through the process, making her feel safe and respected. Thanks to him, she was able to relax and step into the moment. As the cameras rolled and the scene progressed, Julie found herself unexpectedly overwhelmed, not by fear, but by emotion. The moment became more intense than she thought it would. After filming the scene, she stood up to walk away, and her legs gave out. She was literally weak at the knees. "It really had hit me rather hard," she admitted later. It wasn't just the physical closeness or the kiss. It was the emotional weight of stepping into unfamiliar territory and feeling something new. And while that love scene was hot, it wasn't the only thing heating up. Wait until you hear what nearly knocked her flat in the Alps during The Sound of Music. The helicopter. Hell of The Sound of Music. One of the most unforgettable moments in film history is the opening scene of The Sound of Music, where Julie Andrews twirls joyfully in a wide-open alpine meadow as the camera swoops in from above. With the mountains behind her and her voice soaring, the image seems peaceful and magical. But behind the scenes, it was anything but calm. In her memoir, Julie Andrews pulls back the curtain on that now iconic moment. The truth? It was a nightmare to film. The scene was shot using a helicopter camera crew, something quite new and difficult to manage in the 1960s. The helicopter had to fly low over the meadow to get the perfect angle and close-up shot of Andrews spinning in the grass. But every time the chopper got close enough for a good take, the wind from the blades knocked her flat on her back. Julie had to film the twirl over and over again. She'd walk to her spot, take a deep breath, and begin spinning. Just as the helicopter swooped in, the heavy downwash from the spinning blades would hit her with full force. It was strong enough to throw her to the ground. Mud, grass, and grit flew everywhere. She would haul herself back up, dust off her costume, and try again. In total, it took 9 takes to get it right. And this wasn't done in a warm studio. This was high up in the Austrian mountains, often in damp and chilly weather. Julie remembers being completely exhausted and sore by the end of the day. When the director finally said they had what they needed, all she could think about was getting back to the hotel for a hot bath. And then there was the hair dye disaster. For the film, the studio wanted Julie's hair to be lighter. She agreed to a change, but the first attempt at dyeing her naturally brown hair went terribly wrong. It turned bright orange. In the end, they cut her hair short and dyed it blonde to fix the issue. That blonde crop became part of her character's look, but it only happened because of a mistake. And just when you think you've seen it all from her, Julie had no problem making Walt Disney blush on the set of Mary Poppins. Uncle Walt, foul language, and cigarettes. One of the most surprising stories in her memoir involves none other than Walt Disney himself. During the filming of Mary Poppins in the early 1960s, Julie was performing a flying stunt on a wire. The idea was that she would float gracefully through the air with the help of special rigging. But something went wrong. Instead of landing smoothly, Andrews came crashing down, hitting the ground hard. She was in pain and caught off guard. And in that moment, she let out a string of curse words. Standing nearby was the film's producer, Walt Disney, or Uncle Walt, as many called him. Julie later said she was sure he had never heard words like that before. It was a shocking moment, especially coming from someone who, on screen, represented everything wholesome and clean. But in real life, Andrews had her own way of dealing with stress, and if that meant letting off steam with a few colorful words, so be it. She wasn't trying to be rude or offensive, she was just being real. And this wasn't the only time her off-screen behavior raised eyebrows. Karen Dautrice, the child actress who played Jane Banks in Mary Poppins, recalled being stunned one day on set. She saw Julie, still in her full Mary Poppins costume, the tidy hat, the perfect gloves, the Edwardian dress, smoking a cigarette and swearing at the crew. Dautrice, who was only 8 years old at the time, said it was one of the most shocking things she had ever witnessed. And as shocking as a foul-mouthed Mary Poppins might seem, nothing surprised fans more than what Julie Andrews did in 1981, when she stunned the world by bearing it all on screen. Topless scene in S.O.B. By the early 1980s, Julie Andrews had been seen by millions around the world as the face of kindness, charm, and grace. Her roles in Mary Poppins and The Sound of Music made her a symbol of family-friendly entertainment. But after years of playing sweet, well-behaved characters, Andrews was ready to break free from that image. She wanted to show a new side of herself, something bold, daring, and completely unexpected. That moment came in 1981 with the film S.O.B., a dark comedy directed by her husband, Blake Edwards. The film was a sharp satire of the Hollywood film industry. It poked fun at the pressures of fame, the obsession with sex appeal, and the way studios tried to shape and control stars. In the movie, Julie played a squeaky clean actress, a character very similar to her real-life image, who is convinced by her husband, a troubled film director, to take part in a racy remake of a failing movie. In one unforgettable scene, Julie Andrews appeared topless on screen for the first time in her career. This scene caused a huge stir. Fans who had grown up watching her as a magical nanny or a singing nun were shocked. The public didn't expect someone like Andrews to take such a bold step. Some praised her courage, while others criticized her for ruining her image. But Julie was fully aware of what she was doing. In interviews, she made it clear that the scene was about taking control of her career and breaking away from the limiting roles she had been offered for so long. When asked about the drastic change, Julie famously replied with humor and honesty, "Does Mary Poppins have an orgasm?" It was her way of saying that she was more than the characters she played. She was a real woman with depth, desires, and personality beyond the screen. Her husband, Blake Edwards, knew exactly what he was doing by casting her in the role. He wanted to challenge how the public saw Julie. The couple worked together closely on the film, and Andrews trusted him to handle the subject with care. Despite the controversy, the film was an important turning point for her. It reminded audiences that she was a versatile actress willing to take risks and grow creatively. And if you think that was Julie's final twist, think again. Even now, in her late 80s, she's still full of surprises. Falling for a dangerous man. Julie Andrews had already built a successful career by the time she met Blake Edwards, but it was through her relationship with him that she truly learned about love, vulnerability, and the complexities of life. When they first crossed paths in the late 1960s, Julie was still reeling from the end of her first marriage to Tony Walton, and Blake Edwards was a famous director, known for his work on Breakfast at Tiffany's and the Pink Panther films. Blake was unlike anyone Julie had ever met. He was witty, charming, and funny, but there was a complexity to him that made her hesitant to open up. He had a dangerous aura, not in a physical sense, but emotionally. He was a man with layers, one that wasn't easy to figure out. In her memoir, Julie admitted that at first she tried not to fall for him. She recognized his emotional complexities and was wary of getting too close. But despite her best efforts, she eventually found herself drawn to him. There was something magnetic about Blake, and the more she got to know him, the more she realized that they shared a unique connection. Their relationship moved quickly. Julie and Blake married in 1969 after a 2-year courtship. Their marriage was not without challenges, but it would become the most important relationship of Julie's life. One of the difficulties they faced was Blake's ongoing health issues. He struggled with a variety of conditions, including gallbladder problems, chest pains, and the debilitating effects of infectious mononucleosis, also known as the kissing disease. At times, it felt as though Blake's health problems would consume their lives, and Julie often found herself acting as his caretaker. Despite these struggles, Julie and Blake shared a deep bond. Julie reflected on how the two of them would lean on each other through tough times. Their shared sense of humor was one of the things that helped them get through many of their challenges. Julie's love for Blake was not just romantic. It was also rooted in a deep sense of partnership and mutual respect. They understood each other in ways that no one else could. Blake's decline in health was a particularly difficult chapter for Julie. As he aged, he became more frail, and in 2010, after a long battle with health issues, Blake passed away from pneumonia. Julie was devastated by the loss, describing it as a moment that left her feeling like a part of her was gone. But despite her grief, Julie remained strong. She was supported by the love of her family, the memories of her life with Blake, and the lessons she had learned from their years together. Even after Blake's death, Julie has carried on, continuing to build her legacy as an actress, author, and voice for children's rights. But in her memoir, she made it clear that the time she spent with Blake was one of the most meaningful and life-changing experiences of her life. If Julie's confessions got you all excited, don't forget to like this video, share, and subscribe for more interesting stories about your favorite stars.